come, and all the flowers are
More cream.
Look at the baby.
Every person has a... Oh, look at black. Look at this face of them black. Look at the black faces. That's their mark. Every farmer puts his own mark on his sheep, and then they have their own dye colouring. It's always good to tell.
Here we go, Kirsty.
Where I am lying, and kneel and the sea.
Can you move Margaret's shade up? There's the
there for me.
What's this place?
And they wouldn't, well, that's sad. They've put that up there for... They get money, as I told you, for owning land.
You pointed to that.
There were two families here.
Right.
Right, okay.
That's right.
See the wee house on? Oh, it's beautiful.
This must be original over here. This over here?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Beautiful. Oh, I see they've kept the old original.
Good morning, everybody in Philadelphia, and to all the families who may be listening. We're here today at the original Brennan homestead here at Shallogans Fintown, County Donegal in Ireland. It's an honour to be here. This behind you is the original family homestead of the Brennans. And to all you people that are watching there in Philadelphia, this is where all that people left from around 1890 right through to 1913 or 14. Is that correct,
That's
Joe?
All right.
As you can see, this is the original outhouses. The other end is original, but the end nearest to the screen here on camera is something that was built in recent years. Originally, on the right side over here, another family lived. A man lived there called D. Brennan. And to the left of your picture is the original home. Of course, not the same as it is today. It's been refurbished, but modelled exactly. The old house, in other words, looked exactly the same. The windows looked a little different. I think they were smaller. The panes of glass were a little smaller. The porch at the front that you can see, there was no porch as such. There was a little small porch. Probably some of you have the small photographs that was taken here over the years. If you check with the old photographs, you'll see the difference. But the home today looks the same, and it's in fact a beautiful, beautiful house now. If you can imagine, when all the sand's gone and the streets cleared, it'll be a really beautiful home. With me now is Mr. Joe Ryan from New Jersey. This is the man who started the original geology on the Brennan family tree. And this is why we're standing here today on this particular spot. Joe, welcome to Shallogans. This is your first time in Ireland.
First time.
How are you enjoying it?
We love it.
He loves it.
Amazing.
Yes. It's very cold here today. It's April, what date?
The 5th.
It's April the 5th, 2005. We had a very late night last night, so that's why we have to ask each other.
A lot of drinking last night.
Oh yeah, he drinks. Oh yeah, a lot of drinking last night. You know, and it was hard to get out of bed this morning. Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, the last surviving members of the Brennan family that lived here was Donegal and Patrick. I'm not sure when they actually died. I'm not quite sure the dates, but I knew them personally. They were two lovely men. They were. I spent a few happy days with them in the 70s when I came home on my holidays from London with my wife and son, and I have many fond memories of them. They were lovely people. They were a gentle people. They had qualities that you don't always find today in people, you know. So anyway, for all of you looking at in Philadelphia for the Flanders family and all of them, I wish you all well, and I wish you were here. I want to show you something very interesting over here, so if you follow me over here, Christy and Joe. In 1847, when the famine swept through Ireland and millions of people left for the United States and other parts of the world, there was a lot of hunger. People didn't have much to eat. The blight hit the potato, and so a lot of people died before they got a chance to get away. In some neighbourhoods, there were certain families that were very compassionate, and the Brennans was one of those such families. Each area, some families, they got a special big pot met where oats were boiled, and the poor people who had nothing would come to this house and eat from this pot. Everybody would get a plate with milk. The Brennans always kept plenty of cattle, which meant they had homemade butter, they had milk, they grew everything possible. This is the original famine pot. There's a special name which I can't think of for these pots. Made from metal, perhaps somewhere in the north of Ireland, but so you can imagine the compassion these people had, the Brennans, to actually get these things. This held a heck of a lot of stuff.
Very hard.
Very big. It was quite high, and a great fire went underneath it, burned. And of course, around this district in them days, we didn't have coal, we had turf. And this sat on a great fire and bubbled and boiled morning, noon, and night. And anybody that came got as much food as they wanted. So that's the story about the great famine pots. There might have been one another 10 miles away, maybe another one in Glenties, but this is an original piece.
Amazing.
It is amazing, Joe, isn't it? You know.
So what is this barn here?
Yeah. This, by the way, is an original building that was probably here when old Donegal Brennan was here, and this probably was built maybe around 17 something. All these stones came from the mountains which is beyond us. They were all cut. It's mostly solid granite. This was thing, you know, and here you can even see some of the original railroad things that was taken from the railroad when it was lifted, you know.
That was track, Joe.
Yeah, that's an original railroad track piece, you know. And really there's a lot of things around here which you can pick up on from that period. In the picture now is behind the Brennan homestead. This area here that you're looking at in front of you was classed as a garden. Now in here they grew all different types of vegetables, and beyond is the Great Achla Mountain. Now this is the highest mountain in this region, in the Fintown region. This is for Donegal Brennan and all his friends who came from all over the north of Ireland, roamed into this mountain and came back with various types of birds, rabbits, hares, all sorts of game. And if you can imagine then, those fields out there just beyond those trees, they were covered in meadow, and really this was quite a spread, you know. You had horses and all kinds of things. This was I mean, there was wealth here for you know, going back this way, because they were a very well-to-do family. You know, they just had it all, like, you know, but in saying that, they worked hard for it, you know. They worked very hard for it. And there's an original ash tree just where you see the black car park. That's an original ash tree that was probably here around that. You know, this looks like a couple hundred years old at least. That would have been here. If you can imagine this street that you're now looking at, the condition of it today is poorly because the house was rebuilt. This street, if you went back a century and a half, you would have horses and carriages on this street. You would have grand ladies with long dresses, for instance. Because when they, you know, on those American shots that, remember? Yeah. When they went with long dresses, and below, remember I told you about the little narrow gauge railroad? Mm-hmm. This is where this lady of this house, Donegal Brennan's wife, when she was ill in bed some years before she died, used to send my mother, a 6-year-old little girl, down to the track to see if any of the girls came off the train, thinking that one day they would return, but of course they didn't, you know. So there's really a lot of history you're looking at a lot of history out here. There isn't blocks of flats or great streets out here, but believe me, a lot of things did happen back then here, you know. A lot of things, a lot of things. And up here is where they used to go with the red setters and the dogs, the old folks, when they used to go hunting. And this, by the way, folks, this gate here is original. This, in fact, was taken off the railroad. This gate was an original railroad gate. You know, every farm used to have a gate like this, so the cattle and the sheep and things wouldn't go onto the track. This was made around 1895, by the way, this gate. That's the date they were made, 1895. So you're looking at a real old antique gate. There's a lady in here, look, Joe.
Look, Christine.
In here we have an intruder. What do you call it? She's living,
She's a squatter.
she's a squatter. She doesn't pay rent. Eh?
Oh, there's a bowl.
Would anybody like a cup of tea?
I feel like a bowl of tea.
We've got a teapot here. These were bowls which was used back then. In this area, I've got to tell them this story.
Do tell.
And this area, years ago, we drank from bowls. Now on the dresser, the bowls would be all folded like that.
Yeah.
And there would be, for instance, there would be bigger bowls in some houses than others. So if a man liked a bigger bowl, he went to the best house, you see, because he got the biggest potions, you see. But these were good. They were either held like this. Most people held them like that. These things, by the way, would hold maybe a half a pint, and some a pint was a lot of tea to drink, you know.
God, what's
You know, a hell of a lot.
they run into the buyer pretty
And
often.
we have all numerous kinds of antiques and pots here. Look, we've got this. I can remember this. This was a favourite in the 40s
was
and
the colour,
50s.
yeah.
That was the colour, wasn't
Right,
it?
yes, definitely, yeah.
And now here, if we had guests coming, of course, we used to have the more fanciful one.
So it's a big
This would be
pot.
maybe. This would be classed perhaps as your best porcelain, you know. So it's quite good.
Wonder what that was.
Well, that's for boring holes. This is an original chair from the Brennan homestead. This particular chair, it wasn't the best furniture, but it's what everybody had back then in the 20s and probably around the turn of the century. This is what was used at the kitchen table to sit into your dinner and eat. It's a very good, strong, firm chair. Right.
Better get the house again.
Yeah, just have a little rerun. We can reshoot it if you like.
We'll reshoot it just in case because I don't want to hear it when I get home.
I remember being up there having my tea. Oh my goodness, there's a basket. For the article.
I think it was blurry when they were doing that with the tea and everything.
Ladies and gentlemen, everybody watching, we're standing here in fact we're in one of the carriages of the old railroad here at Fintown. As you can see to the right of your picture, out here is the original platform, and this is where the family of Brennans originally left to go to America. They would have got on board just an ordinary little train here, which carried them on to Ballygofay, Lifford and then Strabane, and then eventually on to Derry, or Londonderry as it was known as in those days. This is where they boarded the liner and took off, and most of the stuff out of Derry actually went to Philadelphia. They didn't always go into Ellis Island in New York, they went to Philadelphia. And this is the place for those people left from, and many, many other families as well as the Brennans, many other people. The railroad it opened in 1895. It was a narrow gauge railroad, which meant naturally the rails were smaller and the engine was smaller and the carriages. So around 1947, it was closed for passenger transportation, and then it went on to carrying livestock to the fairs, which was fair days in every townland back in those times, you know, which is something now that's disappeared, and today we have what is known as livestock markets. But this is the original station house, and beyond that is the original water tower where the little engine used to fuel up with its water to get its steam. And right behind me is Shallogans, about 3 miles in the distance beyond. In those days, there was a lot of activity around here. Of course, the population was a lot bigger. And for all of you listening in the States, all the Flanders, the Higginses, and I just can't think of all your names. If I left anybody out, don't be offended. And of course the Ryans. Yes. Mr. Ryan, if you're looking yourself, looking into this evening on the box to see this little bit of film, all your photographs that you sent were wonderful. And by the way, how's that little baby? What's her name, Joe?
It's Sarah.
Sarah, how are you, Sarah? And your sister name is?
Nikki.
Nikki. Nikki, how are you? I got some wonderful shots Joe sent to me of your baby and yourself. And you all look very happy. And Don, how are you keeping? How is your girlfriend?
Yeah.
Ria, do you remember that day in Walnut Street when we met Sally Huck? Do you remember that? It was good, wasn't it? We went down to the Walnut Theatre in Philadelphia and we met Sally. It was wonderful. And with that, I'd like to wish you all the best here from Fintown, the old railroad, original railroad track and station. And to all you people in Philadelphia, I wish you a very good day or good evening.
Okay.
God bless and thank you.
Me too. I wish you.
Yes, here we are. We're leaving the old carriages. This is some of the carriages. Yeah. This is a lady from Donegal. Wow. Now here's what you've been looking for. Donegal Brennan Shallogans died on the 19th of March 1932. His wife Madge. My mother's name was Madge. Their son Donegal. That's Donegal, 73. That was the man that I drove to settle down. These trees down here, I watched a lot of them grow. And as a little lad, I used to fish all the way along there with the rod and line.
Oh, yeah. They're pretty, yeah, it seems like they're tight.
The old IRA were very active in this area, okay? And in the night, somebody thought this was a figure of a man, and beyond there in the field, some riflemen were hidden. You know, they thought it was the black and tans, you know, the people that the English sent over. So they opened fire and they thought that was one of them, and you know, they stuck maybe 100 bullets into it. And as you can see today on the cross, you have the thing. And those people were very, very well-to-do people that are actually buried here. They were in fact the writer of a song called Lovely Old Fintown, you know. Anyway folks, this is what you would call my stomping ground. I used to fish these shores of this lake. Oh, from boyhood. And when I left for London in 1960, I used to still come home and fish and go out in boats here. And this is the island out on the lake, okay? This island, it's a small piece of rock, really. And I remember my mother telling me stories about her dad, and she had a little goat called Tiny. And Tiny was put out on the island and he used to cry. And he actually, the father had to go out and bring it in on the boat then. That was her little pet. So that's the story, you know. Well, gone are the days, but we're still here. We're still here.